Welcome to Marlene at Home. And I'm Marlene, the Adult Services Supervisor at the North Carroll branch of Carroll County Public Library. And this week's edition, is entitled Aprons, Ties to Our Past. I love this book that I found on Aprons, the Apron Book, Making, Wearing, and Sharing a Bit of Cloth and Comfort by Ellen Ann Geisel. And right at the beginning, she had this quote that I want to read to you. The first reference to the apron is found in the Bible, no less. As the story goes, Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the forbidden tree in the Garden of Eden. And this is a quote. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and they made themselves aprons. Genesis 3:7. Other translations say loincloths for themselves or coverings for themselves, but this version said aprons. And the author goes on to write, that would be an emergency apron. Well, there are plenty of people who feel naked without an apron on, and I'm one of them, the author says. And so I thought I'd start off with that. The first aprons may have come about in the Garden of Eden. When I think about my first memories of aprons, it's a big variety. There's all different kinds. There's housework aprons. There's aprons that American waitresses have worn all over our country. There are butcher aprons. There are maids' aprons. How about barbecue aprons, children's aprons? How about all the servicemen that sent aprons home to their moms or the love of their lives? Holiday aprons, dress-up aprons, or the sassy varieties that have funny sayings on them. Or maybe your apron was your first home ec sewing project. Aprons come in various fabrics and decorations and ornaments. Aprons can come as gifts. I know my grandmother, her Sunday school class for years had what they called secret pals each year. And I can remember her opening many gifts from secret pals that were aprons. You could get a store-bought apron or a homemade apron. There is a lot of people now collecting aprons, so you might want to keep your eye out at yard sales looking for aprons. And then very old aprons, there's a whole big thing on preserving antique aprons. There's different types of aprons. There's a bib apron that covers the top and the bottom of the body. There's aprons that come just from your waist down to about your knee. There's fancy smocking aprons. One of the quotes I read said, aprons don't hold us back, they take us back. And you know, every apron has a story, and that's what I'd like to do, tell you some apron stories. The first apron that I can think of, I don't have any to show you, but it's my grandmother, my mother's mother. My Mom Harris always wore an apron. They were pretty threadbare. I can remember that, and she would use them for all kinds of things. She would go to her garden and pick beans and put them in her apron and carry them in. My grandfather had a side business of selling eggs. She would go down to the basement, pick up the eggs that she needed for her household, carry them up in her apron. Her apron was to wipe her brow. She was someone that was a very hard worker, and she always seemed to be drenched in sweat. So the apron was like her brow cloth. Her apron also wiped a lot of tears from children and grandchildren. Apron, she would go out and snip flowers out of her garden and carry them all in her apron. Aprons were just some tool you had to have in life. I also remember that when it was getting time for my grandfather to come home from work, she would change out of her threadbare apron, and she would put on a little nicer one. Now, her very nicest aprons she saved for Sundays, but that's some of my earliest memories of aprons. I wish I had some of my mom's, but I don't. But I did find this in opening some old Christmas ornaments this year. This was one of my mom's favorite aprons. The whole apron, it was a waist apron. The whole apron was this black and white print. And I thought for sure that it was homemade, and I even thought it was my aunt that made it. But I see that it has a tag on it that it was made in Belgium. So I don't know where she got it, from a store as a gift, but she wore it all the time. It has 3 buttonholes across here, and it would button on. You would get various towels to button onto your apron, and my mother lived by these towels. And it's one of my memories that I have of my mom. For myself personally, one of my first aprons was a gift from one of my coworkers. Jane, I hope you get to see this. I worked in a periodontal office. I was a receptionist, and we had a Christmas exchange each year among the staff, and Jane got my name, and she bought me this, like at a Christmas bazaar. It says it's handmade inside, and it gives the person's name, made especially for you. And anyway, this is my go-to apron, if I wear an apron, and it's a front and a back, and it ties on the side. It's kept really nice after all these years, so thanks, Jane, many years later. But that is one that I keep in my drawer and wear when I want to wear an apron. When I was starting to do this program, I asked my coworkers at the library, could you lend me some aprons and tell me some of your stories? One of my good friends, Roberta, whose desk is right near mine, she brought me this one. And I said, well, what's the story that goes with this pretty cupcake apron? She said, I saw it, I love the print, and I bought it. And I said, I do too. I love the bright, cheery colors, the cupcakes, and so thanks for bringing that. One of my coworkers, Nikki, brought one. This was when her daughter was very little, Lorelei. And you can see it's a Miss Kitty, very tiny, very cutesy, and we all as moms wish our kids would stay at this size a lot of times. Then she has one for now for her daughter, a Miss Kitty one, a Pusheen one, that character, that she wears whenever she and her mom bake. And they bake pretty often. And the other day when I was borrowing these aprons from her, I had like a dark navy top on, and I put it up against me, and a little later I looked down, I was like, what is all this over me? These are authentically used aprons. I got flour all over me, and she was like, oh, I should have washed them. I'm like, no, this means of all the ones I'm going to show you, these two have been used very recently. And then this is one of Nikki's herself, and she said this is, even though it's a Christmas apron, she uses it all the time. And after she gave me the apron, she's like, now I'm just dying to go home and make cookies. I said, well, I will bring this back to you real soon. So this is Nikki's, and she's a cat lover, and there are pictures of cats there. One of my other friends, Linda, another adult information librarian, her aprons that she donated for me to use come from Chile. So here's a really pretty one, a bib apron. Here's another one. I love these bright South American colors. Another one from Chile. And here's what Linda wrote about her aprons, and I'm going to read this. After my son graduated from college, he took a job teaching English in Chile. While he was living there, he fell in love with a beautiful young Chilean woman. The first time I got to visit and meet her family, I took them some Maryland-themed gifts. Then the first time my son brought his girlfriend, now his wife, to the U.S. to visit and meet his family, her parents sent us some Chilean-themed gifts, including these two aprons, one for me and one for my husband. So, not just aprons from our country, but aprons from Chile. And then one of my dear, sweet program viewers of Marlene at home, her daughter works with me, and Linda was willing, and Beth is the coworker that I work with, but Beth's mom, Linda, has been faithfully watching Marlene at home from the beginning and sends me comments through her daughter, and she sent me just some adorable aprons and with stories to them. So let me show this waist apron. And she writes, when I was in high school during the summer months of 1958 and 59, I worked as a waitress in a small family restaurant. The dress code was to wear a white top, navy or black skirt, and an apron. A friend of my mother's made this pretty apron for me. I have kept it all these 63 years for the fond memories. So that's the first one that Linda brought me. The second one, she says, and this is like the first one I showed you of mine, a front and a back, it ties on the sides. And this is the apron I wear when I'm cooking. She said it's her favorite one. It prevents food stains from getting on my clothing. I bought it from a Mennonite lady that makes and sells them. And I said to Linda, oh, well, I'll get it back as soon as possible so you can keep cooking for your family. So that's a second one that I got from Linda. And here's another one from Linda. And she said this was a gift. And she said this apron was a gift from a friend who knows that I grew up on a dairy farm and that I like cows, and John Deere tractors. And I said to Linda, when I saw it, I thought this side was for you to use and this side was for your husband to use. And she just laughed. So I take it that Linda's husband is not a cook. I already mentioned this book at the beginning, the Apron book. I also wanted to mention to you again, it's checked in at the North Carroll branch. It also has a pattern for an apron, and there are many, many aprons, styles, stories, patterns, material ideas in this book, the Apron book. Another book is called So Practical, 13 Fun to Sew Designs for You in Your Home. And this one has 3 or 4 aprons in it. Directions, the patterns. I'm sorry, now I lost my place here. I think there's 3. Yeah, there's one more. There's the Charming Waist Apron, the Apron Strings Waist Apron, and the Pretty Crafty Apron. And she said this is a good one for anybody that does a lot of crafts. You can keep your scissors and your glue gun and pieces of felt, or it's kind of like a tool, a men's tool apron or tool belt. And so anyway, there are a number of other sewing books in our branch and craft books that have patterns and directions and suggestions for making aprons. But these are just 2 that I brought home to show you. So every apron tells a story. And I bet you have aprons at your house that could tell stories. You should dig out your aprons. Some of these ladies said I had to dig pretty far to find mine. I'm also going to include some pictures of me and my family, even my grandchildren, in aprons. And so I would encourage you to think through your aprons and your family and tell some apron stories. Thank you again for joining me this week at Marlene at Home, and I look forward to having you back again next week. This is not a great picture of my mom, but I love it because she was in her favorite place, her kitchen, and cooking in her apron. Christmas is when Paul and I do the most of our entertaining, and I love it. This was the Christmas just before COVID. Little did we know, after this time, company would be non-existent for a good long time. This monogrammed apron was a gift from one of my girls. Here are my 3 Ohio grandchildren in their aprons. Avery and Adeline started a little cupcake business named Cooper's Cupcakes, after our dog. They make a variety of cupcakes and have gotten a good number of orders over the last year or so. Our grandson Connor is the official taste tester, but he can never leave his Cookie Monster, whether he's baking or sleeping. Thanks for joining these generations of apron wearers at Marlene at Home. I appreciate your viewing and look forward to being with you again. Happy Mother's Day to all of our viewers who are moms.